here. All right, let's get into it. Friday night was a historic night in the NCAA tournament because for just the second time in history, a number 16 seed upset a number 1 seed. Final score, number 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson 63, number 1 seed Purdue 58. FDU was a 23-point underdog, won the game by 5. David Cobb, is it clear to you? Because I think it's clear to me, and we'll talk through it. Is this the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history?
Yes, and here's why. Although UMBC over Virginia will rightly go down in history, remain the first time a 16 ever beat a 1. That's never going to change. That'll always be the first time that a 16 beat a 1. The disparity in terms of point spread, and then also just the David versus Goliath element of this one in particular. Fairleigh Dickinson, smallest team in the country. Purdue, 7'4", Zach Edey, just added another layer of improbability to what Fairleigh Dickinson accomplished tonight. So I say yes. Maybe it's recency bias. Ask us again in 3 to 4 years. Maybe it's a different answer. But here, just a few hours removed, Fairleigh Dickinson over Purdue feels like the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history.
Let's stop here for a second, and we'll get back to all of the numbers that back up that claim. But you mentioned Fairleigh Dickinson, smallest team in college basketball at the Division I level. Purdue, headlined by Zach Edey, the 7'4", favorite to be just everybody's national player of the year. This was wild when I saw you tweet it. You, back in January, were talking to Tobin Anderson, now a star of the sport, the Fairleigh Dickinson coach. And I want you to talk me through it because somehow, some way, you ended up in a conversation about a hypothetical, like, hey, what if you get into the NCAA tournament and you end up playing, because Purdue was ranked number 1 in the country at the time, you're a 16 seed. That's what you're going to be if you're in the NCAA tournament. You end up playing Purdue with 7'4" Zach Edey. And you guys actually had a conversation about this. Maybe it could happen game. And then obviously it did happen. Just sort of talk us through how all of that went down.
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that I even ended up in Hackensack at the Rothman Center in Tobin Anderson's office on January 31st is kind of a random story, but we happened to be in New Jersey for a few weeks for my wife's job. And, what do I do when I find out where we're going to a new place? I start getting on Kim Palm, looking to see which D1s are having cool stories in the area where we're going to be. It's how I ended up writing about Southern Miss this year of all teams, but we get sent to New Jersey and I'm looking around, I'm saying, wow, Fairleigh Dickinson was 4-22 last season, and here they are in first place in the NEC with a first-year coach and one of the smallest lineups of the modern era. This is incredible. So I reached out to their SID, who, oh, by the way, is an undergraduate student. The sports information director for Fairleigh Dickinson basketball is an undergraduate student. He's incredible. His name is Jordan Sarnoff. But that illustrates, does it not, Gary, the disparity in resources between an NEC team and a Big Ten team. Jordan Sarnoff is an excellent SID, but he is an undergraduate student. And to me, that is an amazing illustration of how not only in stature, but also in resources, this was a David versus Goliath matchup. But yeah, I went up there, watched a practice, got to sit in the office with Tobin Anderson for a while. We were just kind of talking hypotheticals at the end of our conversation. I was like, you guys could likely end up as a 16 seed. And at the time, Purdue was the number 1 overall seed projection. And so what do you guys do if you get matched up with Purdue? And, he chuckled. And I actually ended up using the quote at the very end of the story, or at least part of it. And it was just wild to see that come to fruition. And it's been fun sort of exchanging text messages over the last couple of weeks with somebody who has now become the face of the NCAA tournament. It's been wild. So just an incredible ride for Tobin Anderson, who I think this is important to note. 10 and a half months ago, he was hired.
Yeah.
He didn't get hired until early May.
Right.
Fairleigh Dickinson didn't decide that it was parting with Greg Herenda until several weeks after the season. So the fact that he was able to piece something together on the fly and turn a 4-win team into the team that pulls arguably the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history, it is one of the most wild and improbable stories in this sports history.
So I've been in studio all night at the CBS Broadcast Center for CBS Sports Network. You can probably tell from my suit in my shirt and green tie, St. Patrick's Day. Makeup, still in full makeup. Didn't have time to take it off. Rushed here, got here as quickly as I could.
You look good.
We had. Do I look smooth? Am I not shining under the lights? That's the main goal with this bald head. You got to get enough powder on it to make sure you don't shine under the lights. We had Tobin Anderson on CBS Sports Network tonight, and I used that opportunity to ask him about your conversation with him back in January. Nada's got the clip. Let's roll that now. Tobin, Gary Parrish here. I gather you had a conversation back in January with my colleague David Cobb about the possibility of maybe, when Purdue was ranked #1 in the country, playing Purdue in a 1 versus 16 matchup. And you guys actually, talked through it. How surreal is it to be sitting here in March after actually living through that game and then finishing on this side of it?
Yeah, David and I were laughing about it. We were sitting in the office saying, what would happen if you played against Zach Edey? I said, we'll have to triple team him, quadruple team him, send the whole team at him, whatever. We were laughing and joking. All of a sudden, it came true. I'm like, oh, my God, we got to go do this now. So amazing. Like, just to walk out there and see them and see how good they are. And I've got tremendous respect for Purdue and how they do things. So, we understood the challenge at hand. It was an unbelievable challenge, but it was, our guys just played terrific. I mean, I couldn't believe how well we played. And, that's what makes March Madness so special, and the NCAA tournament so special, is a chance for a team like us. If we played them 100 times, they'd probably beat us 98 times. But a one chance, a puncher's chance, we got it done tonight, and that makes it special.
Later in that interview, we talked about a number of things, but one of the points I subsequently made is that this is, to me, the neatest thing about the NCAA tournament and really college basketball in general. Like, if we were in the first round of the NFL playoffs right now and we were NFL podcasters or whatever, we would be talking about things that in some form we've been talking about all year long. It'd be Joe Burrow, it'd be Lamar Jackson, it'd be Patrick Mahomes, whatever. If we were in the Major League Baseball playoffs right now and we were podcasting about baseball, we would be talking about some things that we've talked about already. I write about this sport, talk about this sport, podcasts, radio interviews, television. I don't know that I've said 20 words about Fairleigh Dickinson all season long, and yet now Fairleigh Dickinson is the biggest story in this sport's postseason, at least right now. And I genuinely don't think that's anything you could get in any other mainstream sport in America. Back to the idea that this was the greatest upset in NCAA tournament history. From a point spread perspective, Purdue was a 23-point favorite over Fairleigh Dickinson in this game. Virginia was only a 20.5-point favorite over UMBC. So technically speaking, this is a bigger upset than that 1 versus 16. The only other 1 versus 16 that where we've seen the 16 win in the history of the sport. Some other notable things about Fairleigh Dickinson. They come from a one-bid league where the conference tournament champion is going to get the automatic bid, except not here, because Merrimack isn't eligible for the NCAA tournament. Fairleigh Dickinson didn't win I guess technically they won their way to the championship game, and that was good enough given the opponent, but they did not win their conference tournament to get here the way every other school in a one-bid league has to do it. Fairleigh Dickinson, Jay Billis, pointed this out on Twitter, ranks 350 heading into the game, ranked 353rd in the nation in adjusted defensive efficiency and 352nd in 2-point field goal percentage defense heading into a game against Zach Edey. And Purdue scored 58 points. What? UMBC, by the way, in 2018, entered the game against Virginia 188th at KenPom. Fairleigh Dickinson entered this game 299th at KenPom. And I want to give credit where credit's due. At Joe Stenardi on Twitter tweeted this out earlier, and it got retweeted into my timeline. I thought it was interesting. He tweeted that if you put 2023 Fairleigh Dickinson on a neutral court against 2018 UMBC, according to KenPom, UMBC would be a 7-point favorite over Fairleigh Dickinson. And so
analytics, schmanalytics. You cannot measure. You cannot measure the heart, Gary. You cannot measure the heart of the FDU Knights. You know what is a shame, though, Gary? St. Peter's was the Peacocks, and the Peacocks had a great noise associated with them. How do you be a Knight?
I don't know how to be a Knight. I need armor. I guess I would need armor. It starts with armor. I think becoming a Knight starts with armor. So you just can't. I mean, I bet you can at 1 a.m. in New York City find armor somewhere.
Pull
I
up
bet
Instacart.
But
pull up another browser.
But
Instacart, some armor.
I don't know where to get armor this time of night.
If Fairleigh Dickinson, Gary, if Fairleigh Dickinson wins against Florida Atlantic and advances to the Sweet 16, will you do a podcast hit with at least one piece of Knight armor?
If I can find full Knight armor, I will wear full Knight armor on the podcast if FDU finds itself in the Sweet 16. There's gotta be a Knight costume somewhere on Amazon. I can get shipped to me by the time it's late Friday, early Saturday. I could probably get it by Sunday. You would think I might be ready to go in on full armor on Sunday night. It just did incredible. And I made this point on our show earlier at CBS Sports Network. Sometimes these types of upsets happened. You know, it's Furman over Virginia or Princeton over Arizona. And people with jobs, congratulations, people with jobs like our jobs will sit there and go, well, you know, the thing people didn't realize heading into this is blah, blah, blah. And that's why you could have seen this coming. You know,
nobody saw this.
There's no way to see this coming. It's impossible to see coming. There is nothing in the data, nothing that says, oh, yeah, Fairleigh Dickinson is about to upset Purdue. Everything suggested Purdue would just full transparency. My call time tonight was late and I was like doing other things, getting ready to go to the studio while Fairleigh Dickinson and Purdue was happening. And then it was like, okay, hold on. This is real. It's time to pay attention to this and lock in. And after I locked in, I thought Steve Lapis was great on the call, by the way, because he made some really interesting points that I fundamentally believe were true as well. You know, those freshman guards, they were part of the reason Purdue was such a neat story. You get two guys ranked outside of the top 90 in their high school classes, and now they're starting together in a backcourt with the National Player of the Year for the number one ranked team in the country. Like, that was the Purdue story for much of this season. And as the season progressed, those two guards, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, they went from being among the reasons Purdue was ranked number one in the country to among the reasons Purdue was vulnerable down the stretch. And in this game, they combined to go, I believe it was 6 of 20 from the field, and they combined for 10 turnovers. And the point Lap made down the stretch, and I noticed this as well, 3 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, where like the clock is ticking, you're behind. It's time. Somebody's got to make a shot, and you can't even get the ball to Zach Edey. Nobody wanted to shoot. It looked, I'm hesitant to use the word scared to shoot. But like nobody wanted that it was like, can we get it to Zach? If not, what do we do?
Maybe was passed up a couple of really wide open shots. I think people not named Zach Edey were 12 of 42 from the field. So Zach Edey has a big night per usual, but all along for Purdue, minus those games in the middle of the season when Fletcher Lawyer was really going off, they've been without a primary secondary option behind Zach Edey, and that was so evident today. And it goes back to the old adage, which has proven only partially true, by the way, during this NCAA tournament, when you look at some of the crucial mistakes made by guards like Kihei Clark and Kendrick Davis over these past couple of days. But yes, to your point, Fletcher Lawyer, Smith for Purdue, freshman, and then you got 2 fifth-year senior graduate transfers, D2 transfers, mind you, but experienced guys who have been in NCAA tournament action on a different stage, but still with Fairleigh Dickinson, Dimitri Roberts, and Grant Singleton. And I think that was a huge part of how this outcome came to be. And I also love the fact that in y'all's hit with Tobin Anderson, he acknowledges, hey, we play this game 100 times.
Yeah.
We probably only win once or twice. He knows that. And that's what makes this so incredible.
Yeah, like me and my buddy Brent Stover always joke in studio because I've got these little go-to lines and we laugh about them because they're the things you're saying something very obvious, but it sounds enlightening, but it's very, very obvious. So you say things like, this is not a 7-game series. Well, of course it's not a 7-game series, but like the point you're trying to make is you don't have to beat this team 4 times in 7 games. You got to beat them 1 time. That's all it takes. And Tobin, I thought I appreciated that as well. He didn't come in here and say, hey, listen, we think we can play with anybody, or we feel like, we're underrated, none of that. He was like, listen, that's Purdue. They're awesome. And if we played them 100 times, they'd probably beat us 99 times. But in this one time when we actually got to play them, we were better. And they were better, by the way. He made that point too, which I also appreciated. He was like, we didn't sneak up on them and steal it in the end. They played better. They outplayed them for really the entire game. Again, Purdue only scored 58 points. And as happy as I was for Tobin and for FDU and all of those fans, I really did feel sick for Matt Painter and for Zach Edey and for Purdue because you heard me talk about it on a previous podcast. Like, I put Purdue in my Final Four, not necessarily because I thought Purdue was playing the best of anybody in that region heading into this thing, but because I wanted Purdue to go to the Final Four. I wanted Matt Painter to be a Final Four coach. I wanted those fans to get to experience that. It's a great fan base. It's a great program. It's a great coach. And you heard Matt Painter say, I thought this was interesting too. He said, we got good guys. Other programs, they got some stuff going on, but we don't have any of that stuff. It seemed like he was referencing Alabama and that entire circus. And he was like, we got good guys, but but this and this hurts. This is we gotta sit on it and deal with it and learn from it. But it's starting to stack up on them now. Because if you look at Purdue's last 3 NCAA tournaments, here's who eliminated them. Number 13 seed North Texas, number 15 seed St. Peter's, number 16 seed Fairleigh Dickinson. Like, that starts to become connected to your program, connected to you as a coach. Until you fix it, this is the type of thing now people will start focusing on heading into the 2024 NCAA tournament. If Purdue, let's just say, is a 4 seed, somebody's going to say, well, I know I'm picking against them in the first round because, I watched them lose to North Texas, watched them lose to St. Peter's, watched them lose to Fairleigh Dickinson. They don't show up in this tournament. I don't know that that's fair. In fact, I think on some level it's probably unfair. I just know that it is something that'll happen. And you could see Matt in his post-game press conference sort of, I think, coming to terms with that. Like, you can't undo this. I mean, you can never undo it, but you can't start to change the narrative about you until next March. And that's a long time to wait to start trying to change the narrative about you now.
Yeah, well, it's like Virginia minus the national title.
Right.
Not even a Final Four on Purdue's resume under Matt Painter. So they are starting to stack up. But I will point out, in the ashes of Virginia's historic loss to UMBC arose a national title winning team. Now, I think Purdue has to make some upgrades to the talent level on its roster in order for that to be the case with the Boilermakers. But there is something to be said for the motivation to be had in a loss like this, in that devastation sort of spurring you on to something greater. Again, I don't think that Purdue has the NBA level talent on its roster without a Jaden Ivey to do that next season, but perhaps there could be somebody in the portal, or perhaps there's a big jump for a player on the current roster to make to become that guy. But that's a silver lining, is that, hey, the only other time this happened, the team it happened to won the national title the next season.
Well, if I'm Matt Painter, that's exactly what I'm preaching to my team. But the difference, and you touched on this, when Virginia came back in 2019, they had multiple NBA players. I mean, that's the thing some people forget about that Virginia team. Like, people lump all these Virginia teams in together because they all play slow and they're not overloaded with athletes and whatever. But like that Virginia team that won the title had like legitimate NBA talent, and they were elite on both sides of the ball. Top 5 in offensive efficiency, top 5 in defensive efficiency. That team was awesome. I don't know that Purdue is going to have multiple future NBA players unless they really get to work in the transfer portal. And maybe what we learn is that, okay, that was cool the year Purdue started, those 2 freshman guards who were sub 90 in their high school class, but maybe they don't both need to be starting guards at this level if you are trying to go to a Final Four, win a national championship. I know that might sound like revisionist history, given that Purdue with that backcourt did earn a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. But I think when this happens to you, you lose to a double-digit seed for the 3rd consecutive year. Like everything's got to be on the table. I think Matt Painter and Tony Bennett are terrific. First, men and also basketball coaches. And I don't care what people on Twitter, like the little shot folks want to take now, that's fine. Take your shots, but like you don't know what you're talking about. Matt Painter is awesome. Tony Bennett is awesome. But I do think they probably both need to look in the mirror a little bit and ask the question, okay, why does this keep happening to us? Because with Virginia, 3 of the past 4 NCAA tournament appearances have ended with, losses to double-digit seeds, and now at Purdue, it's 3 straight. I think both those guys are smart enough to in any walk of life, you need to self-analyze every once in a while. Why does this same thing or similar thing keep happening? And I suspect that both of them will.